Leave the beast to me. Its death shall be instructive. Hello everyone, this is your host Legend, and welcome back to my channel. Tacticus is home to multiple game modes, all with their own unique purpose for the player. Of these game modes, there's no doubt that guild raids are the most popular mode. With 11 unique bosses, all with their own unique gimmicks, the skill ceiling and skill expression is quite high. This video will be going over the basics of the mode, as I prepare to do a mini-series talking about each boss in detail. I hope to work with multiple members of the Tacticus community to help bring this idea to life. That's enough yapping for now. Let's talk guild raids. Guild raids is a timed game mode in which guilds compete against each other in a series of boss battles, with the end goal being to deal the most damage while defeating the most bosses before the season ends. Each season lasts 14 days, with 1 day in between each season as cooldown. There are currently 11 unique bosses, each with 2 primes or side bosses that can be defeated to reduce the stats and power of the main boss. When entering a battle against either the boss or their primes, you bring 5 characters and 1 machine of war. Your selection of characters and machine of war matters immensely and will be a major factor in determining the outcome of your battle, but as we shall soon discuss, it isn't the only major factor. Beginning a raid costs 1 token. Tokens recharge every 12 hours for a max of 3. Raids against primes and bosses always gives you 6 turns total. You must use these turns to maneuver your units into position and deal as much damage as possible. The battle will end if you run out of turns, all deployed units including summons have died, or the boss/prime is defeated. Players may bomb a prime or boss for a little bit of damage, after which the bomb goes on cooldown for 18 hours. Fighting and defeating bosses rewards things like coins and XP, but most importantly Malleus shards from boss defeat chests as long as the defeated boss is under legendary rarity. Oh, wait. Sorry, that's my bias talking. The most important reward is actually guild credits. They are currency used in the guild shop to buy character shards, orbs, coins, materials, and XP books. If your guild successfully defeats every boss, your guild will loop back around to the starting boss at legendary rarity, and you will have a counter added next to your guild on the leaderboard. Speaking of the leaderboard, you can see how your guild is performing overall versus the top 50 and the guilds closest to your rank. Guilds move up and down the leaderboard by their current boss, the amount of damage dealt, and the amount of loops they have completed. That is a very rough generalization, and that gets most of the core basics out of the way, so now we can talk about team lineups and general ideas you want to achieve across all boss fights, so that we may pave way for what is to come. Earlier I stated that your team lineup is a major factor in your damage output, and that is putting it lightly. If I had to give a percentage, I would say your team is 40% of what makes a good raid. As of recording, we have 3 main meta teams, one that is in an active trial period, that being the Battlesuit team, and several variations of off-meta teams. In general, you basically only hear about the main meta teams, that being the Admech Comp, Neuro Comp, and the Rapid Assault or Custodes Comp. Before we talk about each team, let's knock out some terminology. These teams are broken into 3 distinct parts: core units, flex units, and machine of wars. Core units are must-deploy units for any team. Without these units, the composition does not work. Flex units are the ones you cycle in and out of your team depending on the boss or prime you are facing. Finally, machine of wars are rather self-explanatory. They are the final support unit who rounds out your team with their own separate slot. As we go back into talking about our teams, I will be generalizing the information pretty heavily. I will talk about them in further detail once it becomes prevalent in future videos, and for this video I will be looking at these teams solely through the lens of Diamond 3, except for one exception. Otherwise, discussions about how they look at Mythic will be held at a different time. Finally, here's an infographic I made roughly laying out the meta teams, their variations, and a legend so you know who is core, flex, and a machine of war. I will leave this on screen for a brief moment. The Admech Comp consists of 3 core units, 6 flex units, and generally sees 2 Machine of Wars used. Their core units are Exeter Row, Tangita, and Actus. Exeter Row is undoubtedly the heart of this team. His capacity for out-of-turn damage thanks to his passive ability, which is on screen now, is what allows this team to push so hard. Tangita and Actus work together to summon multiple units and have them engage the boss so that Exeter Row will deal more damage out of turn. For flex options, we have Boss Golgorts, Shosil, Aleph Null, Vitruvius, Helbrecht, and Trajan. Most of these guys will seem standard and make sense for a mechanical team, where our major concern is triggering Exeter Row's passive as frequently as possible. But then we have Trajan and Helbrecht, who notably do not have the mechanical trait. So why are they a flex option on this team? Well, if we take one quick look at their passive abilities, it becomes very clear quickly why they make the cut. Both of them bring a powerful buff for their team that propels their damage output even further than an additional mech would. These guys are in a flex spot because their damage buffs aren't always applicable against every boss you're up against. Rounding out the Admechs with their Machine of Wars, we only see the deployment of Galatian, the Redemptor Pattern Dreadnought, and the Living Artillery Tyrannid, the Biovore. Realistically, if you're deploying Galatian, you're using him for one of two things. You're using his large size to secure a pin on a boss, or you're giving Exeter Row another hit out of turn. Biovore serves a much different purpose. Typically, Spore Mines are used to move a boss, bait an attack, or do both in a more desirable way. But they can also be used to pin a boss in place, a method commonly used in the Zarek boss fight. Of the main 3 meta teams, the Admech Comp is the most pure team, and what I mean by this is they don't really have a major alternative team like the other 2 do. Next up we have the Neuro Comp. This composition traditionally builds around the Neurothrope and feeding into its passive ability Neuroparasite, although we have seen a variation arise that uses the Norn Crown Relic to deal mass damage via summons. This team has 3 core characters, 5 flex spots, and a Machine of War for its traditional variation. The Norn Crown variation has 3 core characters, 4 flex spots, and uses a different Machine of War from the traditional variation. Both versions see the deployment of Neurothrope and Abraxas as core, with the traditional version using Yazgor and the Norn variation using Ahriman. Before we talk about the flex spots, let's talk about the Machine of Wars. The traditional variation sees the use of the Exorcist artillery tank to give a clean 20% damage buff to Neurothrope, with the condition of the Hex being on fire being typically handled by Abraxas or a flex spot choice. Norncrown sees the deployment of the Demon Prince Zakar, so that another summon, and a powerful one at that, is deployed onto the battlefield. For the flex spots to make sense, we need to talk about the goals of each version of the Neuro Comp. The typical end goal of the traditional variation is to apply all stacks of Neuroparasite rapidly to a boss, buff the hell out of the Neurothrope, use Yazgor to give Neurothrope an additional hit, and deliver one massive attack, typically resulting in hundreds of thousands amount of boss hit points to vanish rapidly. This team is very consistent in damage output thanks to the psychic damage type bypassing armor, making them great for high rarity bosses. Because of this factor, the flex spots are taken by characters able to apply debuffs/buffs that allow Neurothrope to deal more damage. These are characters such as Ahriman, Mephiston, Roserithra, Zybia, and Eldron. This idea is rather reversed when it comes to the Norncrown variant. Norncrown aims to flood the battlefield with summons and deal mass damage by repeated hits due to the relic's ability to allow any summon in friendly synapse range to attack again. Add on more relics like the Book of Fate that some Thousand Suns members can use to allow a summon to attack again, with a bonus damage buff given to that summon if it has the demon trait, and you get a feel for what this version of the Neuro Comp aims to achieve. This version is typically better suited for lower rarity bosses. With this in mind, we see flex options like Archmados, Winged Prime, Abaddon, and oddly enough Thalmucus, thanks to him being able to use the Book of Fate. For our final meta comp, we come to the Custodes/Rapid Assault team. Once again, we have 2 major variations, the more traditional team, and a team that I have seen referred to as the Big Hit comp. From this point on, I will refer to the traditional variant as RA, or Rapid Assault, and the Big Hit variant as BH. Both RA and BH use precise ability usage to deal massive hits, but each has their own distinct flavor. RA has 3 core characters, 3 flex options, and 2 Machine of War options. BH has 3 core characters, as of now 7 flex options and 2 Machine of War options. Both versions see the deployment of Carrion and Trajan as core, with RA adding Karn and BH adding Leviscus. Once again, I'm going to talk about the Machine of Wars first. Both versions use the Biophore or Forge Fiend. Forge Fiend sees rather limited use, as it is primarily used to remove enemy summons in fights such as Belisarius' Call. Biophore retains its use from the Admech Comp, where it is used to distract the boss and pull them towards more desirable positions. The end goal for both of these teams is rather similar, with one notable difference for BH. Both need good management of active abilities, since a big idea is maintaining a debuff on the boss from Trajan's passive ability that makes them take more damage while they are next to a unit who just used their active ability. Both of these teams also see you balancing how damage is taken and applied to the boss. The difference mainly comes to how a raid is rounded out. Bear with me since I am generalizing this information and I don't play either of these compositions myself. Over the course of a raid, with RA, you're doing everything to ensure Carrion is able to max out his damage delivery over the course of the raid, which should culminate into one final powerful hit. This idea also extends into the BH team, with the difference being that the final blow comes from Leviscus, who is amplified by his need to outperform Carrion's damage output. With these goals in mind, our flex picks for RA is rather simple: Dante, Ragnar, and Vitruvius. For BH, we need to keep in mind that this team is still in development, so they have a lot more flex options than will probably be there once this team is rounded out. These options are Atlacoya, Asoth, Helbrecht, Boss Golgorts, Dante, and Vitruvius as of now. With the 40% out of the way, we can talk about the rest of the 60% that goes into a good raid. To simply put it, a massive chunk of this 60% is skill. You can have the absolute best team in all the land and still only manage 300,000 damage in a raid, while someone with a low to mid diamond team may deal 500,000 damage simply because they have more knowledge on the boss. Since this video is supposed to be going over the basics of guild raids, I'm not going to take an insane amount of time going over each factor, and this is supposed to be a basics video, so we're going to simplify to only a few factors that I find most critical. These factors you should take into consideration no matter the boss or prime you are fighting. My choices are your unit's ability to endure damage, how your team is meant to synergize together, positioning of your team in the boss/prime, understanding advantageous hexes, understanding detrimental hexes, and trying to understand boss/prime behavior. One of the worst things you can do is overestimate how much damage your units can endure. By failing to consider how much damage a boss may do to a unit, you are setting yourself up to fail. Having a team built is only half the fight. Knowing how that team is supposed to work together is the other half. If you do not understand your team's strengths, you are going to reduce your damage output and accidentally cause a unit to be mispositioned. This also ties into the idea of turn order. In the case of Admechs, forgetting to hit a boss with Vitruvius first can significantly reduce your damage output, especially if you only notice or take care of that at the end of your turn. Knowledge of when and where to use your character's abilities to most effectively blend with your team is also crucial. I also want to bring up positioning. It is another great factor to consider. Can you nudge the boss with good manipulation into low ground? Can I get my main damage dealer onto a hex with high ground? Is this an effective place to pin the boss? Are all good questions you should be trying to ask yourself. You also need to try and think ahead to the next turn, and how positioning may change if you couldn't pin the boss down properly, or you are up against a boss who simply cannot be pinned. When it comes to advantageous hexes, I am mainly getting at hexes that give you high ground. If possible, always take high ground with the unit who will deal most of your damage. High ground gives a flat 50% bonus to damage against units on lower terrain and should be used whenever possible. When we are talking about detrimental hexes, we don't just look at low ground and barbed wire hexes, but also consider how bosses and their abilities affect a hex's value. If a boss is able to set a marked hex on fire next turn, you should try to ensure that your units have a way around. If a boss will use a powerful attack on a set of hexes, ensure you avoid them. The biggest one, by far, of these ones I have pointed out is boss behavior. How a boss behaves and uses their abilities is important knowledge. This isn't something I'm going to dive into quite deeply in this video. Just know that understanding how a boss behaves will allow you to better prepare for their attacks and can allow you to pin a boss down in an advantageous spot. I know I said that boss behavior is the most important factor, but this is technically a lie. Something I did not list, but still need to note, is what I actually consider the most important factor. You will fail. You will forget something. You will mess up the replay you are trying to copy, or you will fail to properly consider all the factors that you need to consider, and it will make your raid go from a great raid to a bad one in an instant. I point this out because it is how you rise from these failures that matters most. The worst thing you can do is give up. Acknowledge where you fall short and take some time to learn what went wrong and how you can improve. As I stated, I cannot possibly cover everything in this video. I have merely chosen points I have found the most critical, and this is by far the one that has the greatest impact on how you play. The best way to improve is by trying, messing up, and being willing to try again. It may take you 1,000 times, but eventually something will click. Another great thing to do is have a community right beside you helping to light the path. Share your replays and ask your most experienced players in your guild what can be improved. The more you understand, the better you will do. I didn't get to where I'm at in Tacticus because I'm amazing. I got here because of the people around me. I truly accredit everything to my brothers from POH Death Watch. We work together to lift each other up and point out where we struggle. I am far from the best player in this game, but I know I would be worse off without the guidance I have received. As always, I will leave links in the description to community resources such as my guild cluster Pants of Horus, the official Tacticus Discord server, and much more. I also want to invite you to my community Discord server. As of writing and, well, speaking, it's still quite empty, but I would appreciate company and we'll be chatting there often. I'm more than willing to hear out ideas and things that you would like to be talked about in a video. I know I've said it before, and I'm going to say it one last time. As this series of videos goes on, I will be talking more deeply about guild raids, guild raid teams, guild raid bosses, and much more. So please, do stay tuned. That's all from me for now. This is your host, Legend, signing off.